On my right foot, I have a tattoo. This is not a great way to start a sermon on a 12-degree weather morning because no, I will not be taking off my warm socks and my fuzzy boots to show it to you today. But I will tell you what it says. It says hoc est amore, which is the Latin for the last line in a quote by the theologian Emanuel Swedenborg, which says, to feel the joy of another as joy in oneself, that is loving. To feel the joy of another as joy in oneself, that is loving. Now, we might then ask, what is joy? Because in a season where the jolly and bright, the forced merriment, the idea that you have to buy just the right gift or show up with at the holiday party with just the right dish in order to provide or experience this thing known as holiday joy, I wonder if that word starts to ring a bit hollow. Yet, we're all here this morning, I'm guessing, because we hope, we long, we believe that there is something deeper. That there is something deeper in this word joy that helps to shape the rhythm of our Advent season in the church. That this joy we are leaning into today has a deeper definition. It's the joy and rejoicing that we hear about in our scriptures, which is not tied to one's circumstances or dependent on external experiences. In fact, in our scriptures, joy is set amongst struggle and suffering, certainly not pristine circumstances, and not requiring the perfect gift wrap in order to attain it. In Zephaniah, we find amongst cosmic destruction and divine judgment this call to rejoice and the finding of joy in God and amongst it. Our text, the canticle from Isaiah, is this brief song of praise with the hope for a new exodus. It's embedded within a story where God is saving those who are under the control of an evil power, one represented by cosmic forces of chaos. And then in our letter to the Philippians, Paul commands, and yes, those verbs are imperatives, the readers of the letter to rejoice. And thank you, Pam, for experiencing that text for us. To rejoice, not just to rejoice, but to rejoice. Now, this may sound nice and cheery until we remember that Paul was in jail at the time, and he was writing to a people in the early church who were heavily being oppressed and persecuted. And so when Paul commands them to practice joy, it is certainly joy in the midst of suffering. So clearly, this joy we're talking about in scriptures is not the joy that the advertising algorithms are trying to get us to purchase. The word joy, the kairo, in fact, in Greek, means to rejoice, to be glad, to be joyful. And in the Greco-Roman world, these expressions of joy were often associated with celebrations and victories and religious festivals. However, the Christian understanding of joy as expressed by kairo transcends the mere external circumstances. This word was representing this idea of it was deeply rooted in the spiritual reality of God's presence and promises, and this joy was often contrasted with the temporary and superficial happiness found in worldly pursuits. Dr. Brené Brown, based on her sociological research, defines joy as an intense feeling of deep spiritual connection, pleasure, and appreciation. And Brown describes how through 2 decades of research, she has learned about the relationship between joy and gratitude. She says that there is an intriguing upward spiral. Joy, gratitude, joy, gratitude, joy, gratitude. And maybe it might be the antidote to that often downward spiral that we hear about or experience. She goes on to talk about the power of gratitude as a practice and how there is significant scientific evidence that practices of gratitude actually change us. At our house, every night at dinner, we each get to light a candle, or if you're 3, you get help lighting your candle. And we say something we're grateful for. And even the 3-year-old does that. We can come dragging ourselves in after a long day, and maybe there's just scrambled eggs or quick mac and cheese on the table. Maybe it's been one of those days where everything has been hard and weighty, and yet we get to the table and we pause to think about what is it that we're grateful for. I know for myself, I find myself then having to go back over my day and realizing, oh, I'm so grateful for colleagues and team members to go through hard things with. Or I'm so grateful in that hard conversation that person invited me to think about something differently. Or I'm grateful to be part of a group of people and community that are trying to make the world a better place in amongst the suffering and the pain we see in the broader world. And at the end of most days, to be grateful that I have a home and a family and food on the table, that I'm sitting there, even if it's just mac and cheese, having a warm meal. And in that moment, something changes. No matter how tired, no matter how hard things are, in the moment, there's joy. I'm intrigued by how Brené Brown talks about that the power of gratitude comes when we practice it. And as followers of Christ, as spiritual people, this idea of spiritual practice, coming together, be it in collective liturgy or in our own spiritual practices, changes us. The wise ones throughout time have been telling us this, and now the science backs it up, that our rhythms of prayer actually change who we are. That as we practice gratitude, we might find ourselves seeing ourselves, the people around us, and the world differently. We're reminded that in all things we're experiencing, even if at first blush it feels bleak, that there is something to rejoice about. It doesn't erase the hard things, but it brings around us the support and the presence of God, who is there with us in it. That in all things, there is good news. Even in that thorny gospel passage today, did you think I was going to slide over it? I really was tempted to just slide over it. But did you notice that it ends with Jesus proclaimed the good news? That somehow winnowing forks and unquenchable fire is good news. Did you hear before all that fiery stuff what the question was that Jesus was asked multiple times? Jesus was asked, what should we do? And Jesus, to each of these people, to the tax collector, to the soldier, said, here's how you reorient. If you have 2 coats, give one away. If you have enough food, share it. If your job is to collect taxes, only collect what is right and just. If you are a soldier, don't use your power to extort. Be a kind and generous person. And it is in that you are following Jesus. It again goes on to talk about this chaff, and I think the question we might ask ourselves is, what is that chaff that is blocking us from giving one coat to another, to sharing what we have, to not extorting our power? What is it that is blocking us from experiencing joy? What is the chaff in our society that needs to be burnt away so that God's people may experience joy together. Yesterday at our cathedral in Springfield, there was an ordination service. 3 people were ordained to the transitional diaconate and 2 were ordained as priests. And as I sat there experiencing the service, I thought about each of these people's stories. And I didn't know all of their stories to the nth degree, but I knew a few facts about them. One, that they had gone to 3 or 4 years of seminary and gotten this graduate degree, which is no small thing. They'd spent time in some kind of chaplaincy internship, most of them probably in a hospital, others in hospice care. That they had definitely had multiple interviews with the Commission on Ministry, with the Standing Committee, with the bishop. That they had written a lot of papers about their process. I knew that they had gone through a journey and that getting to that moment of ordination was unlikely. It didn't just happen. It was something that was sought after. It was likely a difficult journey. And then I thought about the ministries that they have ahead of them, the incredible uncertainty about future employment as the number of full-time clergy jobs is shrinking rapidly across the church, the reality of this vocation, which many of us get into for moments like this, these beautiful moments on Sunday morning when we get to preach and teach and lead in liturgy and in the sacraments. But they're going to quickly find out that these roles are filled with much more arduous tasks like administrative leadership and putting out fires and slogging through the realities of running organizations and worrying about, boilers not heating sanctuaries quite enough and being dependent on organizations that are dependent on volunteers and the goodwill of the people you're called to serve. I didn't tell them all this yesterday, but they're going to discover it. So they had a hard journey to get where they are, and you know what? They have a hard journey ahead, but you know what was present yesterday? Joy. And you know why I think it was present? Because each one of them expressed the gratitude to the people, their family, their friends, the clergy who were there, our bishop, for how they had been accompanied on the journey. And they expressed gratitude to God for what it is they were called to do, for the journey ahead. That there was a deep sense of joy born out of gratitude as they met that moment. They could pause and give thanks for it all. Today is Gaudete Sunday. It's this Sunday in Advent, the third Sunday, where we recognize joy. And I want to invite you to look at the Advent wreath for a moment. That within our 3 blue candles, within this season of waiting and wondering, season of unknown, that we have this rose-colored candle. And often, and I think I even used this word in my rector's note this week in the Eagle, we use the word reprieve for this Gaudete Sunday. But I'm going to challenge my own and others' take on this. I wonder if it is less of a reprieve and more of the center of the whole season. That the joy that we find in the spiritual practice of being present to the joy of the Lord being our strength is actually that which makes us able to walk through the rest of the season of Advent. It enables us to walk through dark and challenging times because we are lifted up. We are warmed. We are surrounded by that love of God. And as we are grateful for it, we feel joy. That the joy of the Lord is my strength is not just a phrase, an idea, but a reality. That we are born up by joy. That is what gives us strength. And I think that's why we keep coming back around this table each week to the great Thanksgiving. That's what Eucharist means, the great Thanksgiving. It's this time where we give thanks together. We express gratitude. We come together, and maybe in that we feel joy. When we come to the table, I will invite us to lift up our hearts. Think of that physically, that's posture of gratitude. And you will respond, we lift them to the Lord. And I will sing, let us give thanks. Let us offer gratitude to the Lord our God. And you will respond, it is good. It's not just okay. It's not just a thing we do. It is good. It is good. That word of all creation was good. It is good to give our thanks and praise. Because we don't praise God and thank God and offer God gratitude because God is collecting our thanks and keeping track of, did you say thank you enough this week? That's not why we offer our praise and thanksgiving to God. We offer it because we believe that our praying shapes our believing. We believe that we are shaped by our liturgy and our prayers, and that as we give thanks to God, as we practice giving thanks, it will change us as individuals, as a community, as a world. And so in this season of Advent, may we look for the coming of Christ among us in all the places where we welcome, where we pay attention, where we are open to joy breaking through. Amen.